G'day, I'm Shane Dowling. I publish the website kangaroocourtofaustralia.com, and I'm with Alex Murphy. He set up a group called Vote Angus Out in relation to Angus Taylor. Alex, you want to tell me a bit about your group?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alex Murphy from the Vote Angus Out group. Based out in Thirlmere in the Hume electorate, part of Angus Taylor's electorate, which spans basically from Camden in the north down to Goulburn in the south and out to Burrawa in the west. So I've helped start this campaign with a few other people, and it's all, in the name, essentially. We want to see the back of Angus Taylor at the next election, and replace him with a good, community-minded, independent candidate, who's really going to focus on serving the community, and not going to be beholden to big party donors, whether it's, from the polluting industries or whether it's from, any other industry that's got a lot of sway in Canberra. We'd really essentially like to see politics shifted back towards a focus on voters rather than, big money sort of organisations who have more say than that what they should.
In the last sort of 6 to 12 months, he's had a lot of allegations made against him for corruption. There's Watergate, there's Grassgate. Watergate, I've written about it a few times, most of the media have, which relates to a $80 million payment to a company in the Cayman Islands, which Angus Taylor originally set up himself, for water that doesn't exist. It's for future water overflow, floods. And so the water, I don't think the Australian government's never gotten anything back for the 80 million. I've written about it. Everything points to a fraud by Angus Taylor involving Barnaby Joyce, who got rid of the tender process, and Barnaby Joyce's department went directly to the company that Angus Taylor was involved in, and overpaid for the water. And so is that the sort of thing that's motivated you to get the Vote Angus Out group up and running?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, aside from, wanting better community representation, I think for a lot of us, and for me included, one of the big motivations has been, all these scandals that have been that have had Mr. Taylor implicated in them. So, whether it's the Watergate, whether it's Grassgate, whether it's Clover Gate, any number of scandals, and whether or not he's guilty of them or not, it raises some really big questions on, should this man be representing us with such a baggage that he has, and with no real investigation into what has actually happened, conducted by any sort of authority who's able to effectively investigate. I mean, I know the Australian National Audit Office has looked into the Watergate scandal, and come up with some, quite scathing feedback of it, but that's kind of where it's ended. And with the Clovergate issue, where a forged document was used to attack Clover Moore and Sydney Council, there was no investigation finalised for that. So really, it begs the question of, if there's no investigation that's really able to give the public faith in Angus Taylor following, what he's been accused of, where do we go from there? How can we have any faith in him if he has that lingering over his head.
He's currently Environment Minister, isn't he? Or
So he's Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction. So, you know, in a sense, I mean, he's not. Susan Lee is the Environment Minister, but in a sense, you could argue that Angus has just as much of an impact on environmental policy as Susan Lee, since energy generation is the biggest contributor of carbon in the country. And in that position, I mean, he's been voted as the most incompetent minister in the government by Australian Financial Review readers, which is really, you know, it's bloody saying something. And, you know, in that position, he's fudged numbers, he's cooked the, you know, graphs and whatnot to say, yeah, we're doing a great job, when in reality, emissions are going up and the government is doing very little to anything about it. So, and again, that's another reason why we've started this. You know, it's not just the one issue that we have with Angus. It's his conduct as a minister, his conduct as his representative, as a representative for the Hume. It's the scandals. You know, it's a long list of reasons we've got.
yeah, that's where I think I got confused. Where he's quite often talking about environmental issues, obviously in his role. Now, how's your group been going? How long has it been going, and sort of where's it at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's going incredibly well, all things considered. So we started in February of this year. Already we've got hundreds of volunteers signed up. We've got tens of thousands of dollars in donations, hundreds of shirts and hoodies sold. So yeah, it's going really well, and it just keeps on picking up more and more as we go along. And to have been able to achieve that, you know, with the difficulties of COVID, I think really just shows how strongly a lot of people in the community feel about finding better representation and seeing someone who can do that in a better way than Angus Taylor.
With the volunteers, have you got a target number of volunteers you want to grow it to, and exactly what do you want the volunteers to do?
So, I mean, if we look at campaigns like in Indi and Warringah, like with Helen Haynes, Kathy McGowan, and Zali Stegel, they had well over 1,000 volunteers, or at least for Zali, I believe she had 1,700 volunteers, if I'm remembering correctly. So, I mean, if we can get somewhere near that, that'd be fantastic. If we can get to around 1,000, I think that'd still be great. And the reality is that for the Hume electorate, you know, it's an enormous electorate. So the more volunteers we can get, the better, to be able to, you know, man polling booths, do letterbox drops of flyers, which we've actually got coming up over the next couple of weeks. And also just get out into the electorate wearing shirts, hoodies, badges, just to help get the message out there and show people that, you know, this isn't just, you know, 10 people who are particularly annoyed with Angus. This is hundreds, thousands of people who want to see a better representative for the electorate.
It'd be hundreds of thousands across the country.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I guess to hone in on that question of what we want to do with volunteers, it's the letterbox drops, it's manning the polling booths, and just getting out there onto the streets and getting the word out there are the primary things we want people doing.
You got a badge there as well on your jumper, have you?
Yeah.
You're going to lift the jumper up a little fraction, just so it gets the jumper. Yep, that's it. And they can buy them on your website. And you have
Yeah,
a website.
absolutely. Just in the shop section of the website. Shirts $25, hoodies $60, and the badges are free with any purchase.
That's voteangusOut.com.au. Or
Yep, that's it.
now, there's another group in your area that's called what's that called again? Sorry,
So Voices of Hume.
Voices of Hume, that's
So
it.
yeah, we actually started essentially from Voices of Hume. So the campaigns are both working together to try and find an independent representative for the electorate. So Voices of Hume, I believe, was started at the start of 2020. So they've been going for about a year and a half compared to our 4 or 5 months. And so far, they've done a great job of just getting out into the community and conducting interviews with a lot of constituents and just canvassing, okay, what do people want from representatives in the electorate? What is everyone's opinions on all the big issues, whether it's climate change, whether it's, you know, more local stuff like roads and infrastructure, or whether it's, you know, a federal ICAC, so that we can kind of inform policy decisions for an independent going closer to the election, essentially.
And if people want to join your group, your organisation, what's the best way for them to go about it?
So there's a form to sign up on the website to be a volunteer. Otherwise, you can get onto Facebook, send us a message, send us an email, and we can figure out how best people can be put to good use, I guess. Yeah, but easiest way, just get on the website, have a look what we've got on there. There's a whole bunch of reasons for why we're doing this, and all of the little things that Angus has voted for and against and done. Plus, yeah, that volunteer sign up page.
That's pretty well it. Was there anything else you'd like to say or about your group? Or I suppose it's in its infancy at the moment, so it will develop over time, but you're getting a fair bit of support from the other groups, from other electorates, are you? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think over the past few months or over the past year, we've seen quite a few groups, whether it's the Voices of groups or the Vote Someone Out groups, as well as, you know, groups like We Are Hughes and others popping up all over the place, who are really just pushing for better representation, more independence, and trying to just improve the quality of politicians, really, who are representing us. So for us, we've really been inspired by groups like Voices of Indi, Voices of Warringah, Vote Tony Out in Warringah, because they've really set that groundwork of being able to show an independent being able to win a seat and how to go about doing that, whether it's building up a large volunteer base from, you know, those interviews that they initially do with the Voices of groups, or whether it's more of an anti kind of campaign based around, you know, merchandise and whatnot, like the Vote Tony Out kind of campaign. And that's been a massive help for us, as well as I said, an inspiration. And I think the closer we're getting to the election, the more we're seeing groups popping up and being inspired by this kind of rush of independence as time ticks away to the election.
Well, it only would have taken another one or two independents in Parliament, and the independents would have had control of the government.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, the reality is, you know, we've seen all the various pork barrelling scandals, whether it's, you know, sports rorts or the new car park rorts sort of thing, and it just goes to show, like, you know, not only are they throwing taxpayer money around as if it's Liberal Party, National Party money. But, it's all about helping out their mates, where, if we can say, all right, well, we want better representation, we want an independent to represent us, that's kind of pushing the electorate's views rather than, another party stooge who just wants to stick up for whoever their donors are. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, people keeping quiet and not rocking the boat doesn't really get them anywhere. Whereas if people sort of challenge the status quo, then, it's you see in Indi, you see in Warringah, they get better results from their representative.
Well, it's not just it's not just your local electorate. Like if you get rid of Angus Taylor, that'll have an impact on your local electorate. But like I said, you only need a few independents to get up, and they've got the balance of power. So if a few groups like yours are successful at the next election, can totally change the dynamics of the federal government and have an impact on the whole country.
Absolutely. And I think, holding that balance of power, we've seen, something that I'm quite passionate about is a federal independent corruption commission. And Helen Haynes, the member for Indi, put that forward. I think it was a couple of years ago now, and it got voted down. But as you said, all it would take is a couple more independents or a couple more people on the crossbench, whoever they are, to be able to get something like that across and improve the quality of our political representation and get rid of, all the not get rid of all the scandals, but, have a significant impact on what our politicians think they can get away with. So definitely holding that balance of power is massive.
And have you got a time frame for selecting an independent in your area?
So we did until the latest COVID outbreak got in the way of it. So we did initially have our first town hall meeting to try and present a number of candidates to the community. We had that scheduled for July 24th, but obviously now we've had to push it back given how much this Delta variant is spreading. So we're probably looking more around mid-September to get that done. So that'll be a meeting in Camden and a meeting in Goulburn, basically opening it up to anyone in the community who wants to be involved, who wants to show up to just basically see a presentation of a few candidates who have put their hands up to, try and be the next independent to go against Angus Taylor. And then we'd open it up to say, all right, well, what kind of feedback do you have? Who out of the people who've presented themselves do you prefer? And from that, we can hopefully pick someone who's the right fit for the job.
Just to give our people an idea of how big the electorate is, how long does it take to drive from Camden to Goulburn? It's about a 2-hour drive, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I haven't driven directly from Camden to Goulburn yet, because I'm about half an hour south of Camden, but it would be probably about 2 hours, I think. It's about an hour and a half for me to get to Goulburn. And then, getting out to Boorowa is probably about another hour and a half or so from Goulburn.
That's the other side, is it? So it's like a 3-4 hour drive from one side to the other.
Yeah, it's enormous. So there's a really big range of demographics. We've got the suburbs, more towards the north. We've got parts of the Southern Highlands, then we've got down to Goulburn, and out, into farmland in Burra and all the farms in between. So yeah, it's there's a lot of different groups. It's not just a homogenous rural electorate out west. It's a whole big mix of different people.
So ideally, you'd like volunteers from all over to help with the letterbox drops and
Absolutely.
the voting booths on polling day.
Absolutely, and I think we've been really lucky to have that so far. So plenty of people in Camden, Wallandilly, where I am, Southern Highlands and Goulburn, who've wanted to get involved. So, I mean, a bit harder to find people in those more remote, smaller towns where there's only a couple of hundred people, but definitely in those main centres, we've had plenty of interest.
Well, we'll leave it there, but if people want to volunteer or support, they should visit your website, obviously, voteangusout.com.au. And maybe we'll do a follow-up interview once you've nutted out a candidate for your electorate or closer to the election, which is probably end of this year, early next year sometime. It has to be in the next 12 months, I think it is, or even less now. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Shane. It's been really good to have a chat, and I really appreciate what you put up on your website. It's a really great resource for us, picking through all the little things that Angus has done or supposedly done. So yeah, no, it's really good. And yeah, absolutely, we're open to anyone who wants to be involved. So by all means, just fill out that volunteer form. Or send us a message and we'll see how we can get you involved.
That's great. Thanks for your time. We'll catch up again soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Shane.